don't assess the new guidelines quite the way that Dr. Berkowitz does, but going back to the conversation we've been having, you wouldn't expect this to be a major issue at Notre Dame, because if somebody is involved in a situation that could be, for lack of a better term, misinterpreted as a sexual assault,
right.
There are already issues that have arisen there. That's beyond what's expected.
People fall short of our ideals and expectations. It's life. We're human. We're impacted by original sin, right? So what he speaks of is something that we've wrestled with, as long as we've heard cases in our student disciplinary conduct system, since we're beginning to hear them, because often what happens in those is that there are no witnesses. The vast majority of them involve alcohol. The vast majority of them do not disagree dramatically in terms of the facts of what happened. What has always been difficult to ascertain is the interpretation of what happened. Consent, getting to, was there consent or wasn't there, which is a really critical issue. So in our policies, one of the things that we had done in the fall of 2010, and then updated again in light of our review with the Office of Civil Rights, is that we have defined more clearly, visibly, what consent is. He talks about the preponderance of the evidence. That's the standard that Notre Dame had been using, but the Office of Civil Rights said, we want you to make public what that standard is. So we've added preponderance of the evidence into our own, it's in DULOC in our own, in our own languages. But it doesn't change how difficult these cases are to adjudicate. And it's also important to know that if somebody is victimized, that we also help them to understand how it is that they might pursue a criminal complaint. So a student could be going through a university investigation and university process through the Office of Residence Life, and simultaneously be going through a process with St. Joseph County as well, a criminal complaint. And their standards of their burdens are higher than a preponderance of the facts. So we realize what the stakes are here. We realize the devastation that happens, and the thing that is just pernicious about sexual assault on this campus is that we largely have this great sense of trust among one another. And sexual assault doesn't affect just the victim, or even the perception that somebody has been sexual assault, but it affects their friends, right? And then it affects their section, right? And their dormitory, and their family, and the community. It tears at the very fabric of what this community is about. And that's why it's so devastating, is that people think of the strength of the fabric of this community, and it's so strong. But when that's fissured for an individual and then for groups of people, it really undermines all that we're trying to do on campus. So I think he has some points that we really need to think about. And the Department of Education has given, the Office of Civil Rights has given some guidance that we need to be thoughtful of. And this is New Frontier. And I will say this, is that because we were simultaneously or previously going through a review with the Office of Civil Rights prior to the Dear Colleague letter, nobody has been in deeper conversations with how do you put this into practice with the Office of Civil Rights and us. And we've had a really great relationship with the Office of Civil Rights. They came in, they found there was no finding of violation of Title IX. They wrote a 7-page letter. Half of it was, it's all public. Half of it applauded our policies and approach. Half of it were make these adjustments, like the preponderance of evidence, like dual or both parties can appeal, and we made those changes. But we've been in part of conversations with other institutions who are saying, how do we figure this out? How do we understand this? How do we take the ideas that they have and then put them into our policies? And so it's going to take some adjustment, just like any regulation, whether it's in banking or healthcare. What does it mean? And we've been in really frank dialogues about very particular things with our colleagues from the Office of Civil Rights to say, well, if you say this, it means this, but that means we have to do this, and it seems to be counterproductive, right? And there are some rubs there, and we're going to work them out. But for us, there's nothing that is more important than the dignity of somebody who feels they've been victimized and the safety of this campus.